special show because I, Mary Baker, am the only hosting person right now, and they left the controls to me. So
We're all in
I don't know.
trouble.
I don't know what they were thinking, but we are going to be talking about real estate investing and all of the things that you should be thinking about when you're considering investing. We have some pretty awesome guests, if I do say so myself. Mark Stiles. I'm going to go to you first. So we have Mark Stiles from Stiles Law, and he's joining us via Zoom, right from New Hampshire.
Yes, welcome. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be really fun.
Thank you for joining us, as always. We always love to have you. I know how much you love to talk, and
Thank you.
you bring up some really good points when we did another show. I think it was almost 2 years ago now, and I remember you were just asking me very prompting questions, and I was like, wow, I never kind of thought about it like that. And then we have in studio Samuel Horton.
Full name.
Samuel Horton, who is a full-time real estate agent here at Boston Connect Real Estate, as well as my not-so-better half, my fiance. So he has been wanting to get me in a room alone and talk to me about real estate investing for 2 years now,
At least.
and I kind of run away almost all the time. So now's your chance. You have me locked up in a room with Mark as your witness. So I'm going to be all ears with you guys for the next 45 minutes, and I'm going to prompt you. You can tell me all about it, and hopefully we're going to give you guys some really awesome information.
I have a question for you, though, Mary.
Please.
What are you afraid of with real estate investing?
Oh, we're going to find out. You're going to see. We're going to find out. We're going to see me get bright red. I'm probably afraid of what everybody else is afraid of.
What's that?
Making a bad business decision. If I can do it, if it's financially feasible. So before we really get into our topic, I just want to let everybody know. So we're actually streaming on Instagram live right now on Sharon. I think it's McNamara Broker Team, so you can catch us there. We're also on Facebook Live on McNamara Broker Team, Sharon Costa McNamara. All of the Pembroke Connect pages, Dorchester Connect, any of the Connect pages that you can think of. And I'm sure we'll be on the podcast after the radio show. And if you guys have any questions tonight, feel free. I'm the worst person at this one, but if you have any questions, you want to call in, George is in studio, and he will patch you right on through to us. The number for here is 781-837-4900, and you can feel free to aim your questions towards Mark and Sam for tonight. So what am I, where do we want to start here, guys? So Mark, I'm going to let you introduce yourself first, even though everybody knows you.
No, they don't. They don't, but I appreciate that very much. My name is Mark Stiles. I have a law firm in Marshfield on State Road 139. And for the ATD listeners, you may have heard my voice before. I do advertise on this wonderful station, and I am the guest on Feel Good Friday every Friday morning with Rob Hackala. We have a lot of fun there, and I am also the co-host of the Dr. Joe Show. But more importantly than anything, I am also a real estate investor, so I can't wait to share some of my knowledge, experience, and maybe some failures tonight, and some of the ones that we've had with our clients. So I'm looking forward to this because one of the things I always say about real estate when people say, when's the best time to buy? When's the best time to buy? And I always answer them 10 years ago. Well, and then they say, well, when's the next best time to buy? Right now.
Yeah.
Right now. And I'll tell you, Mary, one of the things you said, the anxiety and the nerves of making a mistake. One of my longtime clients who I've had for over 20 years has a massive real estate portfolio. And he always shared with me this little bit of wisdom that when it comes to real estate, any mistake that you make is always cured with time.
That's very true, though. That's even real estate, residential real estate. So I feel like maybe this is why the show will be good for me, because I'm comfortable in residential. Like that's my hub. That's what I know. I feel like I literally eat, breathe, sleep residential real estate. Whereas I really do think real estate investing is a completely different beast. And it's so foreign to me.
But why? You're buying residential real estate and you're housing people who need housing, and you're creating a business where you have customers that you take very good care of and they're happy. And guess what? they're building your net worth.
It's just another service business, right? At the end of the day, and it's in an industry that you already know.
Okay, guys. Well, you're gonna
let's go, Mary. It's game time.
Really comfortable here. Don't give me too many probing questions. Sam, I'm going to let you introduce yourself just real quick and kind of how long you've been in the business, how long, what you've been doing, especially over the past couple of years, and why don't you talk about your networking events that you do?
Sure. So my name's Sam Horton. I've been a real estate agent with Boston Connect for about 8 years now. Prior to that, I actually worked for appraisal management company. So I've been in the real estate business for about 10 years collectively. And I do host a South Shore networking event, meetup, if you will, for real estate investors. The next one actually is March 24th in the office here at Boston Connect Real Estate. We usually have a good turnout there, and there's usually a whole
plethora,
thank you, of different types of investors, from mobile homes to warehouses to single family to short term, long term. So we can get into all the fun stuff tonight.
Yeah, I think so there's so many different ways to invest that I think that's also a reason that I always get a little bit nervous about it, because everybody thinks, okay, well, I want to find an investment property. It's, in my mind, I'm thinking very singularly. I'm okay, well, let's find you a multifamily so you can rent out a unit. So, or live in the unit and rent out, the second unit, rent out the third unit.
So we call that a house hack.
House hack. Okay. So that's a new word for us. So that's house hacking, everybody. But there's so many other facets to it. And like you said, Mark, earlier, building a portfolio, like a good one, as far as I'm aware, you have kind of your hands in multiple different pots, right? It's almost like investing in the stock market. You don't want all of your stocks to be in just single families potentially, or just multifamilies.
It depends. It depends what your appetite is. I mean, folks can invest in, single family condominium units. They can. I love the house hack idea, Sam. I mean, anybody who is getting into real estate at the very beginning, it's a brilliant way to start, right? You have someone paying your rent to help you pay your mortgage, and the house hack, there you go. But, the single family, 3 family, 4 family, 2 family, condo, it's all about taking care of the people, right? It's taking care of your customers and making sure the tenants, your customers, have a nice experience there. And how you do that, a lot of, folks talk about real estate investing being very passive, right? You're getting passive income. Well, it's only passive if you hire a management company, because it is a job if you don't. And if it works for you, it works. Now, one of the things we always hear is, I don't want to get into being a landlord because I don't want to get that phone call at midnight that the toilet is clogged. It never happens, ever. It never happens, because the people are going to wait until 8 a.m. to call you, first of all. And second of all, most people know how to unclog a toilet. But if you have the margin, if you have the ability to have a management company, I don't think there's a better way to grow your net worth than to have real estate with tenants paying your mortgage, and it's hands off. So it's a spreadsheet business at that point. Obviously, you want to have a representative in management that, follows your value set, that these are customers, these are human beings that you're providing housing for, and you want them to have an amazing experience. You don't want them to be treating your customers badly, because then it will reflect on you. It will reflect on your bottom line. There's no question about it, because you'll have vacancies, and that's what you don't want when you're, running a business.
Absolutely. So in that's kind of, in my opinion, so covering why real estate investing is such a great way to increase your net worth. So let's just kind of go back to the very, very basics for everybody, and we'll start to really get into the nitty-gritty of the topic. But that is a good point. So getting yourself comfortable, starting to have the conversations, and truly the fastest growing, and I think maybe, Sam, the stat right off the top of your head about, what was it, like 8%? It was the fastest growing. Real estate investing was one of the fastest growing ways to increase your net worth. What was the percentage?
Well,
that-
over the last 8 years, they've said that real estate is the best investment that you can make. Just
Yeah.
because of appreciation, the tax benefits, and everything else involved with real estate
Yeah.
investing. And then another stat that I like to throw out there is economists are predicting that over the next 10 years or so, that we're going to have about 1 billion people working from home. So if you can work from home and you can work anywhere,
billion.
that's where short-term rental comes into play. And you can rent a property up in Maine where someone can rent it out for a month because they can work from anywhere and enjoy the backwoods of Maine while still being able to earn money. So I think that's really exciting stuff too.
So maybe that's like the future of where a lot of real estate investing could potentially be going.
I think it's a very hot area right now is short-term rentals.
Okay.
Personally, but
Okay. All right. Food for thought. I'm going to write that down. So just the very basics. What different types of real estate investment properties are there? Like, so what are your different types? List them out for me.
Well, you've got residential, right? You've got commercial. You have office, you have retail, you have flex industrial, right? Amazon, right? If you want to be 1 mile away from dropping people off, dropping packages, you've got those Amazon. You've got multifamily residential, from 2 family to 148 units. You've got, hotel. You've got, hospitality. There's a lot of different ways to invest, and you can invest in, what I assume we were talking about is the residential where you have tenants, but you can invest into REITs, right? A real estate investment trust, the publicly traded. You can invest in private equity that builds portfolios of office and hotel and retail. But for, the listeners and people like ourselves, investing in residential real estate to provide housing for other people, I would echo what Sam said, but way more than 8 years, for the last 50 years, real estate has been on an amazing uptick. Yes, there's speed bumps here and there, but if you were to look at a graph from the last 60 years, I don't think there's any asset class that has appreciated the way real estate has, along with what a lot of people don't really take into consideration is the ability to leverage that, right? So you buy a property for $500,000, you borrow $430,000, right? But every year your $430,000 is going down at the same time as that 500 is going up. So you create this spread, this delta that is an amazing accumulator of wealth that I think people miss out on. And if they're not investing in real estate, they miss out on that opportunity because a lot of people see it with their principal residence, and that's great. But imagine if you could multiply that.
Very true.
I'd agree with that. And then what you kind of see with the residential non-investor is they may capture that equity, right, and then use it to update their house, which is totally fine. But in the real estate investing world, we can use that to go find 2, 3, 4 more properties. Right. And that's where the leverage comes in. So it's huge.
Right. And then you could start talking about, 1031 exchanges, and you can defer capital gains.
I remember you talked to me about that once.
Delaware trusts are also very interesting too.
Okay, you guys are all over the place.
Sorry.
I feel like you're talking way above my pay grade here.
Well, dial it back. Where do you want us to talk?
Well, obviously there's a multitude of a plethora of different ways that you can really get into real estate investing. But if we're going to dial it back to your single families or your multifamilies or your short-term rentals, so what is the most common being multifamilies? Would we say that's pretty accurate, and or single family flips? So those are probably the most common ways to get started in real estate investing?
Yeah. So flipping's a job, right? That's an occupation. That's not necessarily real estate investing, right? Okay. That is somebody who is using real estate to create short-term income as opposed to the long game of buying and holding a property. Now, flipping properties is great. It's not great right now because there's not a lot of flipping opportunities. So a lot of the folks that we have represented in the past that quote flip properties, I like to call it recycling homes. They're not very busy right now, but there's always opportunities to buy investment properties because if you're looking for the long term, then you're not trying to time the market, right? Where flipping a property, you really have to get it at a discount for it to work, because you are going to add value to that discounted price and hopefully make a profit on it. But that's more of an occupation, right? Because you're counting on that income to survive, as opposed to having a portfolio of investment properties that you're building kind of like a 401k, right? Kind of like a retirement plan that's building and accumulating equity so that at some point in time, you can utilize that and, and reap the rewards of it. Now, if you build a portfolio large enough, then, you could generate income out of that on a monthly basis, and you could live on that also. But that takes time. Like, you have to build and you have to identify the proper asset that's going to work for you, right? Mm-hmm. So again, you don't have to buy it at a discount for it to work. When you're flipping it, you really need to find a distressed property that has an opportunity to value add, right? To add some value to it, to then put it on the retail market and make a profit. But those are hard to find right now.
Yeah, harder to find. But I know, Sam, so you've worked with actually a couple of people who in the past year have been able to flip properties. So, and I think that's one of the most common ways that I think the beginner investor, somebody who's trying to build some maybe quick money or cash flow so that they can take that money and then put it into the next investment, that's maybe their first thought. Where are they finding those properties? Like, how are they finding those properties? Be like Mark said, they're hard to come by. Yeah. So how are you finding them?
So to Mark's point, the flipping is like active income, right? So you're only as good as your last flip. You have to put the energy and effort into it to actually create that capital from the flip. Whereas if you invest in like a long-term rental or even short-term, you're creating hopefully a passive income. So you're not working as much on the property, but still generating cash flow from the property. As far as like finding off-market, I just led myself into it. The best way to find a flip property, if you will, would be off-market. A lot of the investors that I work with and myself included, will associate with wholesalers, which we can get into, but it's basically
that's a completely different beast.
Yeah, it's all off market. It's kind of almost like a mini real estate agent where they go out and talk to homeowners. They try and negotiate a deal off market and then assign that contract to a flipper, and they usually charge some sort of wholesale fee involved with that. But
we'll touch that on another day.
Yeah, a lot of the flippers, so to speak, that I've worked with have been finding these deals off market. So not going through the traditional means of MLS or Zillow or Realtor.com to find these properties. They're going through wholesalers or simply sending out postcards to homeowners and stuff like that, trying to reach someone before they speak to a real estate agent or someone like that.
Yeah, so potentially word of mouth, like somebody
Correct.
knows somebody who knows somebody who just had a bad experience with real estate agents, or we've talked about that on the show before, or just doesn't want to go through the hassle of having people come through distressed property, doesn't want to, invest the time, energy, and money into doing certain renovations that might be required to go on market. They just try and sell it to somebody kind of cash and
Correct.
let their hands go.
I would say a lot of times it's probate. It's a large family that just wants to be done with the property, or if there's a septic issue, a lot of times homeowners will get a little intimidated by that, and they'll think, okay, I have to go to a cash buyer. What are my options? And they won't go to list it, and they'll try and find a cash buyer, and that could be a flipper, a wholesaler, someone like that, to kind of gain access to that property. That said, it is still very hard to find those deals. It's not very easy.
Yeah.
They're few and far between, for sure.
Absolutely. So an advantage to flipping is if you do it the right way, there's a big cash output at the end, right?
There should be, or they wouldn't do it, right? But again, as Sam was saying, they're really hard to find, and it ends up, it's a lot of times it's a person in distress, right? Because there's some financial hardship for it, so there's that mental piece to overcome, right? How are you helping this person, or are you taking advantage of this person, right? And there's investors that are taking advantage of people, and then there's investors that are helping people move along and get, let the dust settle. But a lot of people, there are hoarders, right? There are a lot of people who simply can't fathom the idea of having an open house and showing their house to the general public. And this is an easier, faster, smoother way to make that transition when an investor comes in and says, you know what, just take what you really want, Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about the septic system. I'll take care of that. Don't worry about all of this extra stuff that you have. We will take care of it. We will, in fact, make sure it gets to a good home. We're not just going to throw it in a dumpster. We're going to get it to, we're going to get all this clothes to another secondhand place. And, there are really, nice, genteel ways to work with somebody who's in a distressed situation. But the reality is, a real estate agent isn't going to be able to put that house on the market because of the extenuating circumstances. You brought up a very good point of the financial cost of bringing your house to the market, right? There's a lot of work that needs to be done. Now, in this marketplace right now, with the opportunities of the renovation loans, there's a lot of first-time homebuyers that would say, you know what, this is the perfect neighborhood. This is where we want to be. I don't care what shape it's in. We're going to get a renovation loan. We're going to get a contractor involved, and we're going to buy that house. And they can get a lot closer to the retail price. But a lot of people aren't aware of that. So, the investor approaches them and says, I'll give you this. And it's still a really big dollar amount because of the way prices have accelerated so extraordinarily, that it's an easy, smooth transition.
Well, I think that we get all of that. We buy ugly houses, or we'll buy your house cash. Though when you were talking about people giving flyers, a lot of homeowners who are in that distressed situation may not know that they have other options, that they're like, we have to go to somebody who's going to, offer us a minimum, but they're going to give us cash and we're going to get out of it. Maybe they have the knowledge, but still don't think that they have any other options. Well, obviously we're talking tonight and you do. So covering flipping. So what's the advantage of holding? So what does it mean when you're holding an investment property?
You're keeping it in your portfolio. So what we like to talk to people about all the time, and it was taken from an amazing podcast, Bigger Pockets. I'm sure Sam's aware of Bigger Pockets podcast, but the Burr methodology, right? Yes. Buy it, rehab it, right? Okay. Rent it, refinance it, repeat, right? And then you get the benefit of, buying something that you can add value to. You could put somebody in as a housing, you get your cash back out of it through the refinance, and then you repeat. You take that money Sam was talking about, you take that money out of that house and you put it into another one. And hopefully, if everything works out well, you're still covering and making money on that first house. And now you've got capital to go to the next house. And then all of a sudden, you've got 10 houses and they're all paying you income that exceeds the cost. And all of a sudden, you're in it. You are in it.
So that's really how you're building, like maybe one of the quickest ways to build, or I wouldn't say quickest because I know nothing, but I know nothing. A way to build your portfolio would be this Burr method.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think it's a brilliant strategy. A brilliant strategy. I
know Sam's been he came home the other day and he's like, babe, Burr.
Burr.
Like, what does that mean? What
Burr
is
it?
I'm in bed. It's 9:30. I'm trying to close my eyes. He's like, no, this is how we're going to do it. This is what's going to happen. I'm like, okay, we can talk about this at a later time. This
wasn't just one time that I've said
I'm sure it's been years. I get it. But it's a great strategy. So if you think about it, you're buying it, you're rehabbing. So there's probably some level of value add there, right? So you're buying it at maybe a discount, but again, in real estate investing, you do not have to buy it at a discount. It's better. Obviously, you're going to, make out better faster. But if you're in it for the long haul and the numbers work, right? You need to be a spreadsheet person, right? You need to know all of the costs associated with owning. Yeah, there he is. So you got a good partnership here. You're ready. You guys, and one of the things we always talk about with real estate investors is, the number one thing people don't do is start. You got to start.
Yep. 100%.
Babe, we got to start. Sam, we got to start.
I mean, getting your foot in the door. So the Burr is a great method. We talked about house hacking earlier, which is another gret method.
Yeah.
We missed. Well, we actually are kind of doing that right now. We do rent out one room. Shout out to Melissa. and that is technically a house hack because we're room. So you could take a single family house and rent out 1 room, 2 room, 3 rooms, or you could again buy a multifamily, 2 family, 3 family, and rent out one of the other units or 2 of the other units, and go from there.
And that's the best way to get started in my mind is for somebody who, is digging in and they want to invest. They get because when they move out, they've got a 2 family, a 3 family, right? They still have that income if they can hold on to it, if they have the strength to hold on to it.
I'm just going to jump in as Mary and Sam's tenant. Yes, I rent a room in their house. But if you have any questions for Mark Stiles or Sam Horton or Mary Baker, because I'm going to slip out after this. Yeah, maybe not Mary. Sam or Mark. You can call the studio at 781-837-4900. Again, 781-837-4900. And Mary, make sure that you let them have enough time at the end of the show to give their contact information because they are really smart. I almost said wicked, but here, they're wicked smart about all this stuff. So be sure to give your contact information. Okay, guys, did I buy you that shirt?
Maybe.
I think I bought that shirt for Sam. Okay, bye.
Thanks for joining. So let's talk about finance for a minute.
Yeah.
What are the different ways that, and I'm sure there are many, but what are the different ways that you could be financing or purchasing these investment properties? Say you have, you're starting out with nothing. Let's just take that scenario. So your first house, that's looking like a house hack, right?
Could be, or if you.
So a conventional loan.
Yep.
Conventional loan, you can purchase it with 5% down, even a multifamily, right?
If you can get away with it, go with the FHA, and you can get a 3.5% down, so you have less principal in the property, and then you can hopefully cash flow sooner, and then move on to the next one because you put less down. If you put a full 20% down, then you're tying up all your money in that property.
Okay.
And you're hoping for appreciation to get
So
it back.
that's in the scenario where you're just starting out. You don't have a house. You don't have any other assets. You're just trying to get your foot in the door. You live in one side, rent out the other side. I'm just trying to bring it down to my level for everybody out there. That's how I have to really wrap my head around it. And then, so what are the options if you maybe don't have any type of cash flow coming in, but you have an asset of a single family home? Or any type of other asset.
So you're looking to buy it as an investment or you're going to live in that property?
You're going to buy it as an investment. You're not going to live in it. So what are
So there are ways, right? So you can buy with very little money, but I will say this, that you're probably going to need some level of skin in the game regardless of how you do it. But there's a whole industry called hard money, right? It's private financed money. The interest rates are a lot higher than they would be if you were to go to a conventional loan like Sam's talking about. So you wouldn't be able to use an FHA loan if you were buying it as an investment because FHA wants you to live in the house. But as Sam was talking about with the hack, right, you get a 2-family or a 3-family, that might be a really, really powerful way to do it, is to get a low down payment. And it is your primary residence at that point, and you have the other folks paying you rent. But private money, you're not going to be able to move into it either. That is for business purposes only, right? So you're borrowing the money to probably flip it, right? So a private lender, you're not going to want to stay in a loan that's 10, 11% with certain amount of points associated with it, but it is a way to start, right? Partners is another way, right? If you have people who are in the business and you bring them into a deal, you can partner up with them. You could get loans. You could, depending on, your situation with family, you might be able to get a gift of equity, right? You might be able to get some level of a gift. But there are ways. I know, Sam, you talk about wholesaling a little bit. Those are strategies that, takes this to another level. But there are ways, but you have to kind of dig in and understand what you want to do. But chances are you're going to need to save up some money first, because it's very hard, even though you hear it on the radio or you go to a weekend seminar, you can get in with no money down. It's almost too good to be true. It's really not something that many people can execute on. But
interrupt you real quick because I think I heard George say we have a caller. George, do we have a caller? Oh, awesome. Who do we have? Tom from Kingston. Thank you for calling in, Tom. How are you? This is Mary. I'm the one who doesn't really talk on the show. I gotta slow down. Sure. Who are they for? Are they for Mark or for Sam? Or for the whole crowd? Okay, we'll go for that. Okay, so let's... So finding somebody who's willing. So hard money is still a loan, if I'm understanding correctly. It's a
Yes.
hard money loan.
Yes.
Correct. With a mortgage, with a note.
Yep. So, yeah, where do you find them?
Tom, this is Sam. There's a few different ways. I'm a big fan of networking. I like meeting people. So one of the ways I do it is go to like local RIA groups, which is real estate investment associations, and I try and meet people there. And there's 9 times out of 10, there's always a lender there. There's always someone that you can talk to that will have some sort of idea as to how you can get into the business. Another good resource, in my opinion, is looking for like an agent like myself or someone that is focused on real estate investing, because we'll go to those networking events on your behalf and look for those business cards and try and make those introductions. And then I'm sure Mark has a couple ideas as well, but those are the two that at least I use to find those types of lenders.
It's usually a niche group of people that, they don't really advertise. It's very much word of mouth. And it's a relatively Wild West, unregulated kind of lending. It has to be sophisticated borrowers who really understand what they're doing, because the numbers, they're challenging. They're very challenging. Your finance becomes your partner, and you need to move very quickly in order to minimize the outlay of that loan. But it is a way to start, and it's a way, if you're flipping and you've got a spreadsheet and the numbers work, it's fast and it's really easy, as opposed to going to a bank, which they're probably not going to lend to you on a flip short term because it doesn't make sense for them. But there is another loan product that is making its way out there. It's called a non-QM, a non-qualified mortgage. Qualified mortgages came into play in 2013 after the mortgage meltdown. And it basically said, no more subprime. We need to have qualified mortgages with qualified borrowers. Otherwise, the loan will be rejected as non-compliant. Regulations have loosened up, and they're allowing what's called a non-qualified mortgage, a non-QM loan that allows people to borrow based on the asset as opposed to the individual. So again, interest rates are a little bit higher, but they're qualifying more on the loan, and they're a lot less than a hard money loan. The difference there is, again, talking about the FHA and the house hacking, typically you need to move into the property, but there are loans that allow you as an investor to buy as an investment, and then they're running it based on the rental income. So I think you all had Pete Fakaizen from Luxury Mortgage in your office talking about the non-QM loans, and he's a great resource for those, and is really, he's on top of the game because it's a new product that's coming into the market. And I think we're going to see a lot more of it. And I think we're going to see it a lot in the investor world too, where the sophisticated borrowers, understand the need for a product that, yes, you're going to pay a little bit more for, but it's different. You're not going to be scrutinized as you would be for a conventional loan. Credit isn't as important. The assets that you have, the debt to income ratios are based more on the asset and what that asset can generate, and the asset being the piece of property that you're buying.
Yeah, so I don't know. So I know Mark was talking. Tom, I heard your question kind of in the middle. I don't know for the non-QM loan what their interest rates are running. But for hard money, I know Mark was talking maybe like 11-12% for a hard money loan.
Yeah.
But we can always get you that information of what the non-QM loans are running. And I think whatever program, if I understood Piva Kaisen's presentation the other day, he came to Boston Connect Real Estate. And he's from Luxury Mortgage Group, which is just right where you are, right, Mark?
Yep. Yep.
He was talking about different types of loans would have different types of interest rates, or they would kind of vary, right?
Yeah, I think, don't quote me on this, Tom, but I think it was like about a point more for the non-QM loan versus a conventional loan. And then like Mark was saying with the hard money, that can be anywhere between 8 to 14% and a couple points on the loan itself.
But again, the hard money is you cannot live in it. Where
What'd you say, Tom? Oh, so the ones that when we talk about the interest rates rising right now, you're like, psh, I've been there. We're talking about going up to 4%, and this is nothing to you. Crazy. Well, we're going to knock on wood that we're not going to see that anytime soon. Thank you, Tom. We appreciate it. Did you have any other questions for us? Are you good? Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Have a great night. Mark, if you still remember your thought there. Sorry to cut you off.
So what I was saying is that, when you're dealing with hard money lending, part of the industry is you are not allowed to move into it. Like, you can't get a hard money loan and use that as your primary residence. So the lenders are only lending for business purposes. So for, buying as an investment, where non-QM, there's a whole portfolio of loans that are available, and one being to live in it, and one, being, investment and flipping and so on and so forth. So hard money is, I would dare say, your last resort, but it is an option, and it's a way to get in, especially if you have the ability to buy at a steep discount.
Mm-hmm. Cash is obviously I would think.
Cash is always king.
Cash is king. Everybody would love to have all of this cash running, or run the money tree out in the backyard so that they can take it to invest. So we're thinking cash, obviously, then maybe this non-QM product, which Pete could do we could do a whole radio show on what he presented the other day. It was mind blowing to me, and I'm kind of really excited to see how I can get involved, and how we can use this product to really help a lot of people who weren't able to purchase before, like entrepreneurs he was talking about. And
to help us buy real estate.
Us entrepreneurs, us 1099 people over here.
Yeah. And I think that was what the purpose of those loans coming into fruition was to help folks that, they can pay a mortgage, but they simply don't look good with an underwriter, 1099s, writing things off, so on and so forth. But what I'd like to talk about is how to find some of these properties, like different ways. We have we talked about distress, right? You drive around the neighborhood and you see, long grass, broken windows and all that. That's one way, knock on the door. But the others, there's foreclosures, right? There was a moratorium through COVID, but they're starting to come up again. And, if people have the stomach for it, we did a video on this recently, buying at foreclosure. There are great opportunities there. It's challenging for somebody, right? But it's an opportunity for a real estate investor. And a lot of times the foreclosure, the debtor, the person who failed to pay the bank, has moved on, right? So that asset needs to change hands, and they do it through an auction process. So if you, had the stomach and the desire, and you really did your homework to understand exactly what this asset was worth, worst case scenario, what needs to be done to it, you can go and you can bid on that property as the lender exercises their rights to redeem the property for failure to pay. So mortgage foreclosures, I think, are going to be a huge boom in the next couple of years for real estate investors. We've had clients who their business is buying at foreclosure, and for the last 2 years, there was none. So you can imagine that banks are ready to accelerate on those. And then there's the REO, real estate owned portfolio, right? So after the foreclosure auction happens, if the bank can't convince somebody from the general public, a third party, to purchase at auction, then it goes back into the bank's portfolio and they become the seller. They sell the property out of their own portfolio. And that is a little less risky for an investor because they actually get to do a home inspection. They get to visit the property and they get to determine whether or not the property is vacant. Because one thing you cannot do is buy a property at auction or bank owns with the former owner in it, because the title insurance companies won't allow you to insure it. And you will more than likely find yourself in court with somebody challenging the foreclosure. So if we can leave here with any advice, if you buy at foreclosure, make sure that the property is vacant and there's not somebody living in it.
That is actually really, really good advice. And Mark, just because I heard the final bell, so I can't believe it's already over. I feel like I still have so many questions, but I want you to give your contact information. Obviously, like you said at the beginning of the show, you are a real estate investor yourself. You work with real estate investors. So if anybody has any questions, I want them to be able to get in touch with you.
Yeah, so the best way is to call us at 781-319-1900. I do have a Calendly link. If anyone's familiar with Calendly, I've blocked off times to talk to people with no commitment. It's calendly.com/M-Styles. And what I would encourage listeners to do is to go to our YouTube page. We have a YouTube page at Stiles Law. And if you type in real estate investor or foreclosure, we've got videos where we talk about all of this fun stuff. So check that out at YouTube at Stiles Law.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's fun.
Sam, give out your contact information. Before you do that, one tip for everybody who wants to get started in real estate investing. What's like your top tip?
For me, kind of to Mark's point earlier in finding a deal, I like driving for dollars. So if you drive around a neighborhood, you look for that beat up house that has the car that's been sitting there for 20 years, write down the address, and then do what's called a skip trace. Try and find out who the owner is, see if you can get in contact with them, and see if they're willing to do a deal with you.
People should contact you for that because I feel like that's very high level. So if they want to get in touch with you, how are they getting in touch with you?
So you can reach me at the Boston Connect website, which is www.bostonconnect.com. I'm one of the agents there. My cell is 781-789-8366. You can call or text anytime. I don't answer after 10 though, so
you can
I'll
also
call
get
you
in
back
touch
the next
with us
day.
and we'll get you in touch
Yes,
with Sam.
Absolutely. Or you can email directly at sam.horton@bostonconnect.com.
Wow, my mind's about to burst, guys, with all of this. I'm excited. I think, to your point, Mark, it's challenging that foreclosures are potentially we're going to start seeing them more and more because the moratorium have been lifted. But it does provide opportunities, and as well as I am, now that I'm kind of getting into the real estate investing world with you over here, I'm seeing the light. I'm coming to the dark side or the light side.
I'd like to credit Mark too, because I've heard him say foreclosures are coming. Probably about like a year and a half ago, he's like, they're on the rise, they're coming. Just wait.
They are, and it's going to create more inventory too, because your flippers are going to take those, add value, and put them back into the market. So that's going to be a positive too.
So the future is looking bright for real estate investors.
I think it's about to come for the real estate investors.
We could potentially do one thing that we didn't get to tonight that I wanted to get to was how people are taking title. So what's the best way? And maybe that's a little bit more of a high level. Is it in an LLC? Is it in a trust, or is it in their name? And I think that maybe the levels kind of change as you go.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. And I heard Sam talk about Delaware corporations and LLCs, but I think that the one thing that most people forget about, and it's relatively inexpensive, is an umbrella policy. Get with your insurance agent and get an umbrella policy that covers everything. And the entities aren't as important. I think it's a good idea to separate it from your individual names, but if you have a solid umbrella policy, then you should be covered.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Sam, for joining us. That's our show for tonight, guys, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thanks. Sorry that the music comes on pretty quick.
Yeah, I can't hear the station, as you can imagine. So I didn't hear Tom or anything.
Oh, you didn't get to hear Tom at all.
No.
So, well, I'm glad I didn't fully direct him in your direction then.
Yeah, I can't hear the radio.
I thought you could hear the studio, but you could hear George. You just can't hear the live.
I could only hear him kind of through your earphones, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Food for thought. Well, thank you for joining us. I feel like I could legitimately talk.
So should we give a little special extra for your Facebook Live people?
Go for it. We're still on.
Well, so here's the question I always get.
Okay.
Do you have a list of foreclosures? Can you get me the list of foreclosures? Here's what I'm going to tell everybody to do if they're interested in purchasing at Foreclosure, is to go to the Boston Herald on Sunday, get your Boston Herald on Sunday, go to the legal notices, flip to the end, look at the legal notices, and you'll see all of the auctions in Eastern Massachusetts for the next week or so. Write down every one of the auction companies' names and websites and go on those websites and bookmark them. That's where you're going to find your auctions, is through your foreclosure auctions is through the auction companies. So some are, do a lot more than others. Some are affiliated with the law firms that do the foreclosures. So bookmark them. Some of them will send you lists so you can get on their mailing list, and you'll actually get emails of, weekly updates on what's available for foreclosure purchases. But there is no secret list that the attorneys have. I could tell you that right now. There is no secret list. This is how I did it. I would open up the Boston Herald on Sunday and I would look and scan through which towns that, I was interested in and see if there was anything worthwhile. And then I would go to the Registry of Deeds and I'd try to determine how much the debt was. And then I'd go to MLS and I'd try to determine what the value of the property was. And then I would have my bank check and I would go to the auction in my mind, knowing exactly what amount I would bid at. And I wouldn't go $1 more, no matter what, because auctions are intoxicating.
Storage wars.
It gets wild, and you get the fever, right? And then you all of a sudden you go undisciplined and you've overpaid for something, and you really need to go into it knowing, okay, septic system fails, this is how much it's going to be. Pipes burst, this is how much it's going to be. Wear and tear, I'm going to need to do this much work on it, and value is there and there. Here's my number, and you got to stick to that number, otherwise you're going to get burnt. And the one thing is I always recommend people doing, and the auction companies may or may not answer the question, but you always ask, is this a first lien mortgage foreclosure? And it's important to ask that because there's a lot of second mortgages that are foreclosing now, right? So someone has a first and a second, and the second mortgage is foreclosing. And because it's in second position, you're buying it subject to that first mortgage, right? So they will more than likely disclose it, but you need to run that number. Typically, they'll disclose it and say, here is the latest payoff statement that we have on this mortgage for the first mortgage. So that first mortgage may be, $400,000, and you're bidding on the second mortgage, but your top number is $500,000. So don't bid more than $100,000 on that second mortgage, because you're still paying $400,000 to the first mortgage. And the other reason it's important is because what about all the other liens, right?
Yeah.
First mortgage position with a loan title insurance policy, if they foreclose, it wipes out everything that went behind them. That's why it's so important when we're doing closings, is to make sure that that mortgage is in first position, that, these last minute title problems, what is this mortgage outstanding, no discharge, whatever. That's why we need to clear all those, because on behalf of the bank, we need to put that in first position, because they need to know that they have superior right to everybody else other than condominiums. In Massachusetts, condominiums have the super lien, right? So sometimes you'll go to an auction and it's actually a condominium lien auction, which are really interesting because they blow out the mortgages. So if the condominium association is aggressive and the bank doesn't pay, typically what will happen in a scenario where the condominium fees aren't being paid, the bank will pay them. because they know that they're going to get blown out. So they'll pay them and just add it to the escrow deficiency to the borrower, and then they'll foreclose. But sometimes, the banks fall asleep, or they have a small mortgage, and for whatever reason they don't bid, they don't go to the auction, or they think somebody will bid high enough where the condo fees will get paid in full, and then it goes in priority, right? So first, mortgage would be next in priority behind the condominium fees, second mortgage, and then maybe there's a lien and an attachment and all these things. It's called the waterfall provision. And then if there's excess, it goes to the homeowner, right? So we've seen foreclosures where, you've got a condominium lien, which is the super lien. It's lien superior to the first mortgage. And the people go in and they bid $400,000 on that condominium lien. Well, the condo doesn't get that $400,000. They only get what they can prove, which is maybe $12,000, $15,000 in condo fees. And then it goes down, and the next mortgage is $250,000. So they get paid. Then the next mortgage is $80,000. They get paid. And then there's a contractor who put a lien on it. They get paid. And whatever's left goes to that homeowner. Or if there's one mortgage, right? We saw one recently where there was one mortgage for like $230,000, and the house went to auction for $900,000.
That's what I was just gonna say. You can actually make a profit from letting your house.
You would certainly, it would definitely not be the ideal way to go, because if they hired Sam and Mary, they would put it out to the general public, and that 960 would probably be 1.1. Right. And they wouldn't have, all of the damage on their credit and all of that associated with it. But, it's the waterfall provision. So the consumer is protected, that, it's not like the bank forecloses and gets to keep all the money. Now, that being said, if nobody went to the auction or somebody only bid it to $230,000, the bank takes it back into their portfolio, and then they sell it for $950,000, then they get it, but those are rare. That's rare, because the banks aren't going to want to do that.
What did you say?
I said that's where they transition into the REO, right? When no one the auction, so then it goes to MLS basically.
Right. Or the bank is owed $560,000 and the highest bid is $480,000, and they don't let it go. Whereas some banks will be like, forget it, just cut our bait. $480,000, pass it directly without having any liability, right? Because if they don't take ownership of it, they pass the liability without ever taking ownership. But a lot of them will say, no, we need our 560. So they take it back into their portfolio, and then they have to hire the real estate agent. They have to do the work. They may have to do the eviction, and they have to do a lot of things. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, which is why, we used to have those negotiations for the short sales with them. Does it really make sense for you to take this back and do this and that and the other thing? Because, short sales is an interesting one. I don't foresee those coming anytime soon, though. That's not going to be an opportunity.
The last time that I saw one.
Well, the thing about it is that, ever since the meltdown, everybody had to put in 20%, it's going to be a long time before you see a short sale, because I don't think the values are going to correct like they did. I mean, even if we flatten a year or two from now, and this acceleration doesn't, and it corrects a little bit, maybe because of interest rate pressures or something like that. Nothing like what we saw where values dropped. But the reality of it is nobody had skin in the game. People were buying at 100% financing. So, any correction, they were underwater, so everything was a short sale. So in order to get back to short sales, we would have to get back to these loans where, people were putting very little money down, and then we'd have to have a correction in addition to that. Yeah, exactly. But I do see a future of, looser loans coming. I mean, there's no question about that. And that's only going to continue to drive. People say, they ask me, what do you think about the market? When do you think it's going to bottom out? And I laugh. I mean, Econ 101, like, how can it crash? There's too much demand for too little supply. I don't know how it could crash. And then I always follow up with, and the exotic loans haven't even come back yet, because they're coming back. They will come back. History repeats itself, and then, so that's going to just continue to drive it up for 3 to 5 years, so So I think it's a great time for investors. I really do. I mean, it's hard to find the deals, but if they believe in the process, buy now. I don't think there's a bottoming.
Sam believes.
And even if there's a correction, right? I mean, I bought properties in '04. I bought properties in '05. I bought properties in '06, and they dropped. I mean, I was underwater for a while, and I was like, wow, this kind of sucks. Like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like Kiyosaki, you screwed me on this. Like, what's going on? How do I get through this? But you wait. And those ones that were underwater, I mean, it's ridiculous where they are right now. I mean, it's like,
It's a long game.
but it's not that long. That's the thing. Like it is a long-term play.
Okay.
But you'll see how fast it happens, but you have to get in. That's why I like to make that joke, when's the best time to buy real estate? Oh, 10 years ago, and everyone's like, oh, very funny, but of course it's like talking to your financial advisor. I wish I had met you 10 years ago because you'd be in a much better place right now. Alyssa McNamara says that all the time. It's true. Like if you met with your financial advisor 10 years ago, where would you be? Real estate, same thing. If you had pulled the trigger 10 years ago, look where you would be. You would have paid down that mortgage. You would have accelerated in your appreciation. You'd have this delta. So what's the next best time? Don't let 10 years go by again. Do it right now, and there may be some hiccups, and that's the thing. And you hold on for the ride, because if you're in it for 20 years, you're going to win. You are going to win.
That's actually something else Alyssa McNamara had told me so I started a Roth and IRA, something with her. And she goes, with investing, just the best thing that you can do, don't look at the statement every month.
Yeah.
Drive yourself crazy. She's like, as long as you don't need the money, especially when I started, I was 25, I think.
Good for you.
And I just put the money in there, and now it just does its thing. And I don't ever look. Yeah. Like maybe like once a year for tax season, I look and I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh,
yeah.
And that's
but when it's down, you're buying at a discount. And when it's up, you don't get as many shares. It's dollar cost averaging. Just don't look and keep trusting, keep pumping it in there. Real estate is the same way. I mean, a good real estate investor is buying no matter what. They're buying every year, any month, any market. And, if it's a discount in '09, great. I got a couple of discounts, maybe I overpaid in 2023, but you know what? By 2033, I'm glad I did it because I was generating income, right? That's the thing that people, and I didn't even mention this in the delta of the appreciation versus the paying down of the mortgage, but you're getting income, like you're receiving money for this asset. What other asset class, other than a stock that's paying you a dividend, do you get money like that? And a dividend is pennies compared to what rent can be, and rent is on a massive acceleration right now too. So get in the game, Mary.
Mark,
come on, you got to trust Sam knows what he's talking about. He's done his research.
Toilet at 1:00 in the morning, and to that point, I always like joke with people. I'm like, yeah, but if you're making, okay, let's just say you're making $1,000 a month after everything, that's $12,000 a year. You answer that phone call once, is that worth that? The change there, your time versus that extra paycheck, not even including the tax benefits and the pay down of the loan itself. So
yeah,
he's done his homework, Mary. Trust him.
Believe me. When I remember maybe like 3 years ago, he really started getting into it. It was the way of the future, and this is where we were going. And babe, we need to create passive income. And I was like, all right, you bring me a business plan and I will jump on board. And I can say that we've taken steps towards the future, a ring being one of them. So that helps my confidence level a lot. But also, we've been working on some things. We just did a HELOC. I've said that on the show.
Oh, there you go. Good.
To be able to start, like you said, at the very beginning, just start. So that's where we're at. And I don't know, maybe we should do something like our investment journey, Sam. We should do like a little.
That would be cool.
Like Chip and Joanna Gaines. what our little real estate investment journey
Do
is.
a little YouTube.
Yeah.
Show
People would love it. People would appreciate it. And, it would be the authenticity of it, like, oh my God, I think I'm going to throw up. Like, I'm so nervous, and oh my God, we just ripped open the wall and there's horsehair plaster in there. We didn't see this coming. Or there's wild electrical, knob and tube or something, people would appreciate that, the authenticity of it. But you got your HELOC, you got your down payment, you got your non-QM lender, you're ready. Think about if you had started 3 years ago when you started talking about it, look at the appreciation that it would have already happened,
And we didn't even touch like creative financing either. And where I had, and I wanted to ask you this question in general, where did you have a moment where it kind of clicked for you? Like you're like, oh, I should do this. I should not just practice law, but also invest in real estate. Because for me, I sold a 2-family in Randolph. That was a family friend. She owned it outright. And she told me about 75 times, you should buy this. You should buy this. You should buy. And I was like, yeah, sure. I'm going to sell it. And like 6 months later, I was literally kicking myself going, why I could have approached her with seller financing. I could have had.
Oh, that's what you mean, creative financing.
That's another thing we didn't even talk about is seller financing. If you can convince somebody to do that, that is.
So that was my like mental shift. And then I also read the book by Tim Ferriss, and I'm drawing a blank at what it is. But there was a book where
4-Day Work Week.
Yes, 4-Hour Work Week. Yes,
4-Hour Work Week.
It was like the first book that shifted my mind, and then I fell into bigger pockets and everything else, and that's now.
Yeah, Tim's a great author. Mine was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I think I immediately went out and bought something, like literally closed the book and was like, okay. But I also had, when we were talking about 0405, I could get 100% financing from Countrywide, without much effort. And that, it was easier, but again, I felt some pain because of it too. I immediately was underwater when they corrected. But at the same token, I was like, well, I could have put 20% down and I wouldn't be underwater right now, but I had the ability to have this. So stay focused and just get through this storm and you'll be fine. And I am. I mean, it's these properties are doing tremendously well, but seller financing, if you can get that, that's great. But at the end of the day, if you like the property and you can get the rents, you want to make sure that you're going to cover out of the gate, though. You got to buy it in a way that you're not going to be paying into it. And I know a lot of people, when I was buying them, were like, well, even if I have to pay into it a little bit, it's kind of like a retirement, right? It's a 401k I'm kind of putting into it, but don't forget, they weren't putting any money into it at the purchase, so if you're a little bit light at 100% financing, you're kind of paying your down payment until it stabilizes. But, rents are going crazy right now. I don't know how people can afford to rent right now.
And I don't know that it's going to get any better with rising interest rates. I think it's just going to push, because I don't see our prices going anywhere. I really don't. Like the market, you're the third person today that I've heard, this is just going to we're just going to keep going. It's not going to stop because of the demand for inventory. And with that, I think rent's going to continue to rise. And I don't know. I'm worried that people are going to leave Massachusetts, but it's happening everywhere.
Yeah, it is. Something's got to break. I mean, it's unsustainable, but it's a reality of what's happening right now.
Financing, your creative financing that you were talking about a little bit earlier.
And that kind of puts a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
Exotic financing.
I like that.
Exotic.
Feels dangerous.
Oh, and to credit Pete Fakaizen, he called the non-QMs common sense lending. So
well, that's where it started, right? Because the entrepreneurs, the business owners, the 1099s, it's like, why can't I buy a house? I pay all my bills, I do everything right, but because I haven't been here for 2 years, I can't borrow money. I mean, it is common sense. It's like, does this make sense? Does it make sense? And that's a good way of looking at those non-QMs. But non-QM is they're going to be the trailblazer to create a lot more of that exotic, subprime type of loans. Those are coming back. They'll be back. You watch.
Well, we're ahead of it, and we're not behind it. We're on the 8 ball this time, so it's not going to be so. I know. So literally, when Pete was in here the other day, and he did an amazing presentation.
It's great.
Literally, I was in awe the whole entire time. But from anybody who was in the industry back in, the kind of no doc loans and 100% financing, when he was talking, you heard audible gasps.
Yeah.
From the crowd being like, you want us to do what? And he's like, no, hold on.
But even though his product isn't that, it's kicking the door down.
Yeah.
It's kicking the door down for products like that to come up from behind. And they're coming, and you'll see them, and you'll be like, how did this guy get approved? And it's only going to drive the market more. So that's why I'm predicting like 3 to 5 years of upward swing still. So don't be afraid that I'm going to buy and then it's going to crash. It's going to be a while before it corrects. But even if it does, look what has happened. It only took until like 2014 that people were beyond where they were in 2007. And that sounds like a long period of time if you're in it for the short. Like if you get caught in the middle of a flip, that's going to suck. But if you're in it for the long term and people are paying you rent and you're holding your nose and you don't think about the value of your property, it's coming back, and it has, and it will, No,
I agree 100%.
All right.
I want to come to one of your meetups, Sammy.
Well,
yeah, the next one is March 24th at the office here. So you're more than welcome to come. We do them once a month. It's been at the office here lately because of the weather, but sometimes it does change the location. So
cool. I'll put it in my calendar.
All right. I just got a call that we have to get a listing on market by tomorrow, so my butt's got to go.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes. Client has gotten an offer accepted in Western Mass, and we have their listing that's going to be coming up in Weymouth, kind of like ready to go.
What do you do in Western Mass?
So we didn't actually go out there. We referred somebody out there, but they're over in Ayer.
Got it. That's not Western Mass.
Where is it?
That's like Central Mass. Western Mass is like.
I went there once, and it was almost 2 hours away, and I was like, I can't do this.
Oh my God,
I try and keep a 45-minute, maybe an hour radius.
Yeah, that's a good rule.
I'm not as effective as a buyer's agent when I'm going out that far. So
yeah,
that's my rule. But thank you.
Yeah, this was fun.
Very fun. And Sam, I'm gonna treat him to dinner for being so brave to come on the radio show. And he's probably going to talk my ear off about real estate investing.
Yep.
Good. Hopefully you guys hatch out a plan and maybe, buy that property in Weymouth or whatever.
I have about 7 plans in my head. So as long as she chooses one of them, I'll be happy.
Yeah, they're out there, but don't get paralyzed by analysis, as they say.
That's my biggest
That's
issue.
him. I'm like, put it in front of me and I will leap. He's more of the one like, no, we got to do everything out. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm ready. And we got to, like, I was ready to be engaged 3 years ago. Just saying.
Sam, you ready?
I'm
Ready, fire, aim.
Go.
Ready, fire, aim. Okay. All right. Have fun, you guys. Enjoy it. Get that listing on there. We need more inventory.
Weymouth coming on. We're going to be somewhere around our 500 range. I got to look at comps again. I did a CMA for them last week. So we'll be promoting that.
Might be a good investment.
Might be. It's got a 2-car garage.
There you go.
Highway.
There you go.
All right. $3,500 a month in rent, maybe?
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. Maybe. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
You, Mark.
Bye.
Bye.